Alice Cunha de Silva, thank you so much for inviting me down, putting together this extraordinary event. You're the best.
Oh, thank you.
I'm excited to talk to you and hear your whole story. So right now you're leading the Westinghouse organization within Brazil, but I want to hear how you even first, you're a nuclear engineer. How did you learn about nuclear to begin with?
So I have a technical degree in computer science, and in Brazil, to get your diploma, you have to do an internship. And I ended up in a nuclear company just fixing computers. But I had to go to the power plants because there was employees of my companies working around the power plant. And I was looking at their buildings and having no idea what the reactor was. And when I was going to college, there was the nuclear engineering course just opened in this university.
What university was this?
Federal University of Rio de Janeiro. It's the only university in Brazil that has the undergrad course in nuclear engineering.
Ah, this must be one of the premier universities in the whole country.
Yes. And it's, they had just opened. So I am the second class of nuclear engineers of Brazil.
Wow.
And I found out what it was that was inside those reactor buildings.
Yes.
That I was curious about. So it was pretty much curiosity to figure out what I was seeing and what I was looking and what was inside. And the first week I already started falling in love for it, and it has been like that ever since.
Ah, that's amazing. It's so funny because, so often at these conferences, we talk about how education is important. And that is right. But you know what I think is the actual aspect of education that's important? It's just seeing and touching and sparking the curiosity. It's really exposure, even more than education, that'll get people to love nuclear.
Yeah, it's, for me, I have never thought about going to nuclear. I didn't know this existed at all. It was just not a coincidence. For me, it's like fate that I was going into an internship in a nuclear company because I could go everywhere. I was just going to be there fixing computers, so it can be any company and end up being a nuclear one. And that's how I got into nuclear.
Amazing. And so where was these computers? Were these literally at Angra? Or is that where you were going to?
Yes, it was offices around the Angra power plant.
Awesome. Okay, so you study nuclear engineering. What comes next? How do you advance these studies?
So what I did was during college, I looked for taking all the opportunities that I had during my whole 5 years of college, because in Brazil, engineering is at least 5 years. So in my 5 years of college, I took all the opportunities that I had. So I was president of student sections. I was presenting research work in conferences outside of Brazil. I was an intern in Oak Ridge National Lab. It was actually my first trip outside of the country.
Really?
It was to go to the Oak Ridge National Lab to be an intern there.
So none of this surprises me that you took this many opportunities, because even now you're in charge of so many different programs, like above and beyond your responsibilities. The Nuclear Science Week, this conference, everything. You just take on everything. For me, nuclear is a mission. It's a passion of life. I truly believe the technology has the power of changing the world, and not only in energy, because my work is focused on energy production, but all the applications that we have on the nuclear technology and everything that we can do for society using this technology. It's just so amazing how it touched people's lives, and they don't know it. Yeah. So for me, it's not just a job. It's something that I breathe. It's something. So it's my weekends. It's my weekdays. It's my nights. and so what I try to do is leverage my connections in the organizations that I'm part of to do projects that would take people know about nuclear. So I have some communications projects. One of them is the Nuclear Science Week, because Brazil never had the Nuclear Science Week, and this year was the first year that we were able to do, and we reach out to 5 states, more than 20 activities happening. What kind of activities?
Oh, there was visits of journalists and professors to the research reactor. There was
so important, by the way. What you just said right there, to me, that would be the #1 thing that I would do if I was in your position or any position like that, is to get journalists to see research reactors.
Yes.
#1.
So we took some journalists inside a research reactor that we have in one of the biggest nuclear institutes in Brazil, that is in São Paulo, actually. And we took professors from basic education because they are multipliers of the information. Yes. So we focus also on bringing students from different areas to nuclear medicine labs. We had events on the streets, just talking to people in the streets about nuclear with photos and informations if they wanted to know more. We did one, it was in the first day in the beach area. So people were just going to the beach in a Sunday. Yes. And we were there talking about nuclear with them.
They were basking in the glow of the original nuclear reactor in the sky.
Exactly. We had one that I'm very proud of, that took together more than 500 students in one day to learn, and public education students to learn about nuclear in one state of Brazil. We had talks about possibility of new nuclear power plant. There is a museum of nuclear science in Brazil. There was open doors the whole week, receiving people, teaching them about nuclear. The focus of, because in Brazil, all the events in the nuclear area tend to be professionals to professionals or students of nuclear talking to other professionals. And we try to do the Nuclear Science Week in Brazil very different than that, very open doors, not a conference, not a symposium, but reaching out to people that have no idea what nuclear is and they have no idea of the impact on their lives, the positive impact. And so more like thousands of people we were able to reach with the Nuclear Science Week. And we already received people asking to be volunteers to do more activities in the next year. Amazing. So I'm very excited about that. And another project that I have on that end is the Nuclear Ambassadors Program.
Yes.
I created that project back in 2017. And we launched it also in an INEC in 2017. And the idea is to get groups to create long-term activities on communication of nuclear and focus also on the sustainability goals of the United Nations, showing how nuclear can help us achieve those goals. And we had more than 20 groups around the whole country applied. And we do a kind of competition also to spark the interest. And we did for undergrad students and master's and PhD students. We were able to receive their final report because they have to report us everything they do. And the work was just incredible. We are awarding the 2 winners of this program, this conference tomorrow. And we are going to launch another round of this program. And there are just 2 projects in communications that we have here in order to show to the citizens in Brazil and maybe expand for Latin America later, but the importance of nuclear technology in their lives and get support. Because some people think that nuclear communications is just throwing information out and people just suddenly think about nuclear. And it's not. People are not a blank page. They have their ideas, they have their values, they have their background information. So all these projects that we try to do are to dialogue, to hear as well.
So you're naturally good, in addition to your technical capabilities, you're also a naturally good communicator as well, because I speak to a lot of people, obviously through this podcast, and not so many people intuitively understand what communication is like you do. You have to be, when you're talking to people, it has to be communicating with their feelings as well. It's not just give them information.
It's not. Because the perception of risk that people have and the perception, the fear that they have is not something logical that you can put in numbers. Yes. For an engineer, the risk is a number. I know how much of risk that certain activity has because I can calculate the risk, and it's a probability of 1 in 10,000 something. But for a non-engineer person, a non-technical person that didn't study that, the risk is not a number. The risk is a feeling.
It's a feeling.
And some risks they take willing. Some risks they know a plane can crash. Yeah. But the benefit of going faster to another country is worth the risk, and they trust that.
Yes, and it's more than. And I think what a lot of nuclear engineers fail to grasp is that it's not just that when they go on that plane that they're making a calculation in their head about what the risk is. No. Even, they're not even considering it. What they're doing is they're drawing upon a pool of experiences, feelings, emotions. What is the person next to me? Are they lighthearted? Are they nervous? Like, there's so much that goes into how people perceive risk. And it's all abstract. Yeah, it's all abstract. But so that's what I think we need to bring into the nuclear community, not just. And so I'm saying, even going beyond not just facts and figures, going beyond just feelings, we have to understand why is it that people feel a certain way about things, and address it, and then devise our communication strategies, truly understanding the why.
And if you don't listen to those persons, you are never going to hear why. Right. So that's why the projects that I try to create and run, they are based on dialogue, on two-way communication, because the communication you talk, but you hear as well. So we didn't want just lectures in conferences that people just stay there and hear. They are great for a different purpose, but not for teaching and talking to people about nuclear in different perspectives. So all these projects have this in mind, this communication that we also listen and the dialogue. And that's a passion outside of my nuclear engineering work. Yeah. Because of that passion, I'm part of the Brazilian Association for Nuclear Energy, that is the organizer of this INEC conference. Yes. And I'm a councilwoman in the organization. And I have been part of it since I proposed the Nuclear Ambassadors Program to them. So I got in, and they said, yes, come here and run that.
We'll have Alice do everything in the whole country for nuclear.
No. And Brazil is facing a different reality now. Government is very positive about nuclear in this year.
Amazing opportunity.
They are looking into expansion. They are creating interministerial working groups to try to understand how they can support the expansion of nuclear. So this is a push for improving the activities around the area in the country.
Did they come to you for that? Let's say when the Minister of Energy wants to devise a new nuclear plan, who do they go to ask for advice?
No, not for me, no. They have different organizations inside the ministry. They have Electronuclear, who is the operator of the utilities. They are doing an amazing program on trying to show people how nuclear is good. They have a head of communications at Electronuclear that is running several programs on that area. That is amazing. There is YouTube web series now talking about lives inside Electronuclear, showing people that work there.
That's great. I'll have to watch this. Yes. I haven't seen this.
No, it was just launched 2 days ago. So they are doing an amazing program. And each organization in the nuclear field in Brazil has their own communications division. And what is very good is that now government creating a working group that is looking into a strategy of nuclear communication in the country. So this is being addressed and inside and outside of government as well. It's just, I tend to not just keep waiting on things. Yeah. So that's why I started these programs before, because although there is budget constraints on everything, I think that for me, that is so important that I was trying to look for ways to do my part and trying to teach people about nuclear and talk to them. So that's why I created those programs and in the associations that I'm part of. Yes. Brazil is particularly blessed being, and I'm sure you heard already about that, being one of the biggest reserves of uranium in the world. Yes. And Brazil was able to develop their technology for enrichment, and they are able to go from the mining to the coal fuel. They are great. They're very great.
Yeah. So let's talk about the current state of the country and nuclear plans. The government now is pro-nuclear. They've talked about building more gigawatts, maybe in the Northwest even. From your perspective, how do you see the growth of the industry evolving?
So I'm very positive with that, because it's a different scenario than before. And although there's still a lot of challenges to face and to solve, when you see that decisions that were trying to be made several years back and you were not, and then suddenly start to be made. And a bigger structure is being constructed and people are looking at it, actually trying to study it. It just changed the level of discussions. It's changed,
made it more real.
Yeah, because it's changed from a level that before you had to defend the technology to a level that you have to make it feasible.
Yes.
So that is much better. Although it's still very difficult, it's much better because you no longer need to say it's good and try to convince that it's good. You're now trying to convince that, not convince, but trying to work to make that possible.
I feel like that almost solves the problem itself. If there's a sense of momentum, the natural communication strategy that comes out is positive, as opposed to always being in a defensive posture. If you're in an offensive posture, people realize, oh, things are happening. I want to get involved. I want a piece of the action. And people like it. That makes people more positive towards the whole technology.
Yeah, it's still a challenge because Brazil is a big country and there's several sides of government and everything, but...
tell me more about some of the challenges as you see them. What are some of the... If you were in charge, what would you tackle first?
I think in this moment, not if I'm in charge, but I think in this moment in Brazil, the challenge is cost. It's
everywhere.
Yeah, it's everywhere. Financing, and Brazil government's trying to solve that and trying to attract private investors and for Angra 3 specifically, but the cost is a challenge in the country, and it's also a challenge to have some people that are still not pro-nuclear and decision makers there still need to understand a little better. But as I said, it's a different scenario than before. We can have more in-depth discussions of how to make that possible. And you saw, I don't know, in the opening of this event, how positive was the authorities that we had here from different organizations in the government and in the nuclear organizations regarding this new scenario in Brazil. So I'm personally, as a Brazilian nuclear engineer, very happy with the change and looking forward for the future of nuclear in the country.
Yes, let's talk about cost a little more, because cost is an issue not just here but everywhere. I mean, even in the U.S., where there's so much capital available for all sorts of projects, whether it be from the government or private industry, nobody can really swallow a $10 billion bill to build a giant gigawatt-scale reactor. Is there talk of moving towards, I mean, I heard even in the conference, and of course on this program, we talk about small modular reactors a lot. Is that being seriously considered here as a potential way to bite off the cost in little bit of chunks?
Brazil is starting to look into different possibilities of technology. So it's
who makes that decision? Here?
That's a decision of the Brazilian government. So
the government.
How the nuclear industry in Brazil is set up, the companies that run the nuclear power plant are state-owned companies.
Right.
So it's different from other countries like US that has a majority of private companies running nuclear power plants. In Brazil, are state-owned companies. So the government has a lot of input on all the decisions in the nuclear scenario. So it's future plants, it's a plan of the Brazilian government. And how they decide on technology and everything, it's also their decision from different levels. But Eletronuclear right now is this sole organization running nuclear power plants in Brazil. And by the constitution, they are the ones who need to be running. So it's a government decision on that.
I see. So the government decides the energy plan, and then Eletronuclear is a state-run organization that operates that plan.
Yeah.
And then who's in charge of, let's say, actually building it? Let's say a new SMR were to be built. Who would run that aspect?
So the way that was done up to now was also Eletronuclear.
I see.
But
perhaps that could change?
That's a discussion that is ongoing.
Yes. I love the model that even Westinghouse had back in the day, this turnkey model where the risk is on the capital risk is on the constructor, but also a lot of the upside as well. And then the project, after it's finished and turned on, is handed over to an operating company. I feel like that model could work so well for this next generation of reactors that comes in. But we've kind of gotten in this this risk sharing with the utility, which in my opinion encourages bad behavior and disincentivizes efficiency in the construction process. Because if the ratepayer or the government, depending on what system you're in, is going to foot the bill, there isn't that incentive to build it cheap, to design it cheap, to build it fast. So I wish we could move back toward, and maybe this is possible now, if we move back towards a model of turnkey projects.
Yeah, that had to be a decision of the government.
Of the government
in Brazil, yeah.
And do we know if they have to do this through Congress, or can the Minister of Energy just make a decision?
No, right now, for example, for Angra 3, there is a group formed by different actors in the government, not only the Minister of Mines and Energy, but different players. They are looking into different business models for Angra 3 particularly. But Angra 3 is going to be a base for maybe future power plant. They can use it as a lessons learned process. So I don't know what the decision is going to be. I'm monitoring closely to see, excited about the future of the country on that sense. But there is a working group working on that, on trying to see which model they will follow for finishing that plan.
Amazing. This conference, let's talk about this conference that you put together. What are some of the goals and outcomes of it?
So the conference is a mark in the Brazilian nuclear industry, and actually in Latin America is the biggest nuclear conference in Latin America. And this year, the theme of the conference is Nuclear New Horizons, Fueling a Future, looking into that positive perspective of expanding nuclear and knowing that the possibilities this technology has to better society. So we brought in discussions on all different applications of nuclear technology. The INEC is comprised by 4 major events that happen inside the umbrella. There is the nuclear application meeting, there is the nuclear industry meeting, and the nuclear physics and thermohydraulics meeting, and junior posters. Junior posters are undergrad students that present their research work during the conference. And we had more than 900 abstracts application and 687 full papers accepted and presenting.
Wow, there are that many students.
Yes, ranging from undergrad to master's and PhD
Still, that's
students.
A lot, yes.
So they are presenting in posters and also oral presentations throughout the whole conference.
Boy, we better add some more power plants so these people have jobs after they graduate.
and other areas. So we have discussions on nuclear medicine, discussions on applications of nuclear technology in the preservation of arts, discussion on agriculture, irradiation of food, and then discussion on new models of nuclear power plants. We had an SMR workshop. We have discussions on future plants and new types of reactors and research and development, how that should be done. Space applications outside of nuclear. We had keynote speakers. They're working in that area. They came to the conference speaking about that. So it's big debates on several areas that throughout these days we are able to have. And we brought in some new discussions. For the first time in INEC, we are going to have a table about women in nuclear. So we have this.
I heard that got brought up yesterday. Is this a theme now? The idea of women in nuclear. It's I think maybe Leonam or someone was speaking about it very positively.
Yeah. So as you probably notice, nuclear area, especially in the engineering side, is mainly male.
Yes.
It's male dominant.
I noticed.
And I don't know if you noticed in the opening table, there was 8 people and I was the only woman in that table. So it is important. Diversity is important. And it is important not only because women have a place in that area, but also because it improves production and efficiency. It's proven to improve production and efficiency. So there is a movement, and we have Women in Nuclear is a global organization, but we have a Women in Nuclear chapter in Brazil, and that's what is going to be presented in this conference to show the chapter and the plans of this chapter in the country, and try to empower women to go into nuclear. One of the goals of the Women in Nuclear is besides demystifying and informing about the nuclear technology, is also trying to bring more girls into that area and more women into science. So for the first time in INEC, we're going to have a table about women in nuclear.
And you're pretty much a role model in this case. I bet a lot of the women coming up to look into the space are actually looking at you specifically as how to follow a certain path.
I think that one of the issues of having women in science, the lack of representation. So it's being able to show young girls role models in different areas, not only nuclear, but different areas of science, is a step towards bringing more women into science careers. So that is one of the goals of the organization, and we are going to discuss that in this conference. We also brought in a mentoring program for the first time. We are trying to bridge a little bit the gap between senior and more experienced professionals with young professionals. That is a problem in the nuclear industry, not only in Brazil. Knowledge transfer. So we know that a week conference is not enough to solve the issue, but we try to do our part. And
bridge the relationships and then let the mentorships grow from there.
Yeah. Yes. So often a lot of people are busy in different lectures and papers presentations. So we try to put one event where they can sit together and exchange contacts and exchange experience. So after the INEC, these relationships continue and they can learn from each other in the future. So that is a new thing that we also brought into here to the conference. The Nuclear Ambassadors Award is a new thing also. The thorium discussions, that is the first time that we are having as well, a workshop about thorium. That is
thorium is coming down here as well.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
So there's going to be a workshop about thorium happening in the
all the
conference.
Sexy hype, yeah.
So with INEC is it's not a young conference. It's been happening for long years, and we are trying to improve and bring more other discussions and relevant discussions to this scenario and take advantage of the great participation that we have here.
That's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. So as we wrap up here, maybe you can just tell us about your vision for the future and why nuclear is important to you.
So my wish for the future and what I hope will continue to happen in Brazil and around the world is improving the recognition of the importance of nuclear. And that is going to come with communication, but also with policies implementation. It's good to see that some organizations already recognize the role of nuclear in the clean energy world. It's still a challenge, but we are seeing more recognition. We're seeing countries that are using nuclear as a health measure for air pollution, and that is good. And seeing Brazil also move towards expansion of this program. I hope that the challenges that we still have are solved in a way that cooperation between different players happen and solve those challenges and grow the use of nuclear technology in all areas, not only in reactors, but in nuclear medicine, for example. In Brazil, there is still need for a lot of development in their area to reach different communities that need to use this technology for their health. So my purpose is to work towards that, because as I said, I don't like to stay still.
Yeah.
So my goal is to be able to contribute to this expansion of nuclear, doing my part, working and also developing those programs and different types of programs in the future. And believing that if we want a better world, nuclear has to be involved in that, in all senses. And in clean energy senses, in health and everything. And the things that nuclear technology can do is just amazing. How we have in our hands this much power to improve people's lives. So that's a vision and a goal to work towards more use of nuclear technology in Brazil and around the world to be able to improve people's lives in all different areas. And that's a mission that I have. And I try to do my best to make that happen and be part of it.
Cunha de Silva. Thank you so much.
Thank you.